Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan and welcome to another Book of the Month reading vlog. If you are new to my channel, this is a series that I do where I read the Book of the Month books that I get pretty much as soon as I get them. This is to make sure that I stay on top of my owned Book of the Month TBR, as well as so that I can review them and let you know if you're a Book of the Month member, if you should add on any of these books to your future boxes. I am just a regular Book of the Month member. I am not sponsored or anything. I wish I was, but I just really enjoy the service and like to make recommendations to other people who like the service too. So this month, the month of May, I did get 3 books in my Book of the Month box. If you're not familiar with how the service works, basically Book of the Month curates 5 to 7 main picks every month. You can choose one of them to purchase for, I believe it's $14.99, or the price may have just gone up by about $1, but around $15. And then if you would like to, you can also add on any of the main picks from that month and almost all of the books that they have previously had as Book of the Month picks. You can add them on for $9.99, or again may have gone up by $1, around $10. So it's a great price, so I often find myself adding on books, again, as long as I actually intend on reading them and staying on top of them. So for the month of May, the book that I picked as my main pick is Breathless by Amy McCulloch. This was the thriller pick for May. Typically, they always choose at least one to be one of the main options. I don't always pick that book as my Book of the Month, but I do always look into the synopsis and find out if it looks interesting to me, if it's something that I haven't already heard of. This did look interesting. It's a thriller set on a mountain, and it looks kind of wintry, which is an interesting choice for a May thriller, but it appears to be about a group of mountaineers or climbers that are all climbing this mountain, and then one of them dies in a supposed freak accident, but it might not be what it appears, and they're all kind of fighting for their lives and trying not to end up dead. So I was intrigued enough to pick this up. It is relatively short, so I think I should fly through it, and I'm very excited to see if this is like a heart-pounding thriller. It kind of seems like it might be that way, hopefully, versus like a slow mystery. And then the first book that I added on is a book that wasn't one of the main pick selections this month, but it was a new add-on option this month, and that is A Change by Kirsten Miller. And the only reason that I picked this book up is because of my friend Marisha, who is on Bookstagram. She got an ARC copy of this book, and on its release date she posted her review. It was 5 stars, and the reason that I trust her review so much is because one, she is a thriller queen. She reads almost all of the new thriller releases. We, for the most part, align on our tastes, but not always. But what we do align on is that we like realistic books. Neither of us read fantasy because we like for things to be real and believable. We don't deal with like magic, things like that. However, this is a fantasy thriller. I didn't really read much more about the plot. All I know is I saw fantasy thriller. I saw Marisha give it 5 stars. I knew that she doesn't typically read fantasy or like fantasy. And so I thought if there's any fantasy thriller that I'm going to give a shot, it's going to be this book. So let's read what it's about because I don't remember anything. The inside flap, just this top pink part, says a gloriously sharp and funny modern saga about 3 women who discover that midlife brings a whole new type of empowerment, putting them on a collision course with the evil that lurks in their wealthy beach town. Beach town is a buzzword. I love that, and I'm so excited to read it. 3 midlife women is very interesting. Not a perspective I typically read from, but one I'm open to and am excited to read from. But the evil that lurks, I'm very curious to see what exactly that means. So I'm not going to read anything more because I want this to be a surprise for me, but this is kind of a wild card in whether I will enjoy this, but very excited to read it nonetheless. It is a little bit chunky. It looks like it's around 450 pages, so we will see. And then the third book that I got in my box this month, my second add-on, is an older title. It wasn't a new like pick for this month. It's actually the book of the year for 2021. It's The Four Winds by Chris and Hannah. I read The Nightingale 2 months ago and absolutely loved it, and I basically know that Chris and Hannah is going to be like a new favorite author for me, so I'm slowly collecting all of her books, and this was just one of the next ones that I knew I had to get to because so many people rave about it. It is a historical fiction that has to do with, I think, the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. I don't know a ton about either of those things, but I am assuming it will still be very approachable and accessible because that's how The Nightingale was with World War II. And in general, I'm a fan of historical fiction, so Chris and Hannah's kind of the queen, so I'm just excited to knock this one out as the next in her backlist that I'm going to get to. So those are the 3 books that I will be reading for this video. As usual, I will just be doing this vlog style, so I will check in every so often when I have thoughts on whatever book it is that I'm reading at the time. I knew I wanted to start one of these 2 books first. I wanted to read one of the brand new books, and I actually had put a poll on my Instagram earlier today asking which one I should start, and I had every intention of starting the book that won that poll. And Breathless is currently winning, if you can see that. That's kind of the one I was expecting to win. However, I just checked and the change is actually available on Scribd. So I think I'm gonna deviate. I'm sorry, I hate when people do this, but I'm not gonna listen to the poll results. I'm going to start the change tonight. It just works because I have a lot of like laundry and cleaning and things I have to get done tonight. So I can just pop in this audiobook and get started in this chunky fantasy thriller. I think that format will help me out a lot. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start this one. I will check in when I have some thoughts. I hope that they're positive, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right, I am here with my first check-in. I'm about 125 pages into the change, and it's not what I was expecting, which is weird because I went into this knowing I didn't know what to expect. I knew this was gonna be outside of my comfort zone. It's gonna be different from the books that I normally read, and it's taking me a while to kind of grasp like the tone of this book, everything about it. Like what kind of expectations do I need to go in so that I'm appreciating the right things or I'm paying attention to the right things? You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like a fantasy, contemporary, historical fiction thriller almost. And like when I read a historical fiction, I put a different focus on things than when I read a thriller. Typically with a historical fiction, I put much more emphasis on like the characters and what they're going through, versus a thriller, I'm much more into the plot and like details about what's happening and things I need to pay attention to remember later, things like that. And this one, also being a little bit of a fantasy, is just really hard to grasp. Like, do I need to care about these women's powers? I don't know. But to give a little bit of an explanation about this book, we are following 3 different women. They are all middle-aged women with very different backgrounds in their lives and what they've gone through, and like different stages of life, or like states of life right now. They're in different places, not geographically, but like being married or career-wise or things like that. And all of these women, in coming into their middle age, have developed these powers, and each woman's powers are a little bit different. And so far it seems like something I'm just gonna have to accept. Like, I don't think I'm gonna get an explanation about why they have these powers. It's just assumed that they have them and they're using them, and we're moving along with the plot with that assumption. So it's definitely different for me to wrap my head around that and to not be expecting like more of an explanation or a scientific explanation or anything like that. And we're kind of following them as they dig into young women disappearances and murders in their town, and each of them feel like this duty to be using their powers for good and to like solve these crimes. So it's a very interesting setup. I'm liking the characters. I definitely don't read very many books from middle-aged women perspectives, so that is definitely a new experience that I'm enjoying. I really like how these women, being a little bit older in their 40s or 50s, they're just very sure of themselves. Even as they're developing these powers that they're not really sure what they're doing, they still are sure of themselves because they've had a lot of life experiences. It's like the exact opposite of young adult books, where the main character, often in a YA book, will just be super insecure and they'll be in their own head about everything they're doing, and you just want to shake them and be like, nobody cares, just do whatever you want, like it's gonna be fine. These characters already have that mindset, so they are doing what they want, and it's very fun to read about that, to just read about them being like unapologetically themselves, following their guts, doing what they feel called to do. So those are all of the thoughts so far. I have a feeling at the end of this I'm going to have just a lot of thoughts in general, because it is such a unique and like jam-packed book, and it does seem to have some social commentary. We're having a lot of talk about each of these women throughout their careers, how they've been treated by men and by society. So I'm also really enjoying those conversations, and I'm looking forward to how they continue throughout the story. So I will be back when I have more of a check-in, probably when I am near the end or at the end of this book, and can tell you my final thoughts. Okay, you guys, it's the next day. I apologize that I am very sweaty. It is very hot in Iowa this week, and clearly I'm in my car and I left it on and the air running, so I hope it's not too loud for you, but I would probably sweat to death if I didn't keep it on. So I'm here to update you on the change. I did finish this last night. I was doing reading sprints with Jess over on her channel, Reading with Jess. I love joining her on Monday nights to do reading sprints, and last night, because it was so nice out, I got to sit outside while I was reading. So that was very enjoyable, and I did finish this book. And I wanted to wait to update the vlog on my thoughts because I have a lot of them. This book has a lot to discuss. I think it would make a great book club book because it's not the type of book that you finish and just go, well, nothing to say about that, moving right along. I definitely had to kind of sit with my thoughts a little bit to form what I think, my opinions, all of that. So there are a lot of things that I loved about this book. I loved the conversation about women, female empowerment, specifically the point that this book makes over and over again that women's lives do not end after they have children, or that women are only valuable if they have children. This makes it very clear that after child-rearing age, women still have a third up to a half of their lives to live, and that's very valuable time where women can make a huge difference. So the narrative that we constantly get fed, that women only exist to have children and to raise children, this really challenges that. I loved that. It also challenges a lot of the bias that exists for women in the workplace, and how like ideas get stolen, and how men can rise through the ranks really quickly without being that special, and women just have to break down a lot more barriers in order to get respect. So I can totally see why people are singing this book's praises and saying that it has such great messages, because it really does. Unfortunately, there are a lot of other things that I did not enjoy about this book as much as everyone else seems to be. I really tried to set my preferences aside and be okay with the magic that was going to be in this book, and I just don't like reading about people with magical powers, especially in this story. I feel like because I liked that whole women empowerment message so much, I feel like these women having magical powers in a way took away from that message in some ways, because this book is trying to preach like women are so valuable, especially in their later stages of life, and yet these women are seen as like extra valuable because they have these powers and they're using them for, you know, these good purposes. And it's like, well, wait, normal people don't have powers, so normal women don't have this situation to make them feel so important. So like, why are we reading about magic women and not just normal women? I don't know. I think it's probably trying to be like a metaphor or something, but I just don't like reading about magic because I take things very literally and I like things to be explained. That's another thing about the magic in here, is it's not explained. So I want to make that very clear to everyone that I recommend this book to, that if you read this book, you have to know that the women have magical powers. It is what it is. You have to accept that fact and go with the story as it is and not expect any kind of like explanation for their powers or anything like that. And then the third kind of piece of this book is the mystery that's being solved. It all kind of revolves around young women that are being found dead or are disappearing in this town, and our women feel called to investigate it on their own and with their powers because they don't feel like, you know, the police force in their town is doing a good job or taking it seriously. And from that aspect, I found that this book fell into the trap of too many victims. Like, there were so many young women involved that it's really hard or almost impossible to feel super connected to all of them or any of them, because you just can't spend enough time on their backstory to feel fully invested. So you kind of end up caring about none of them. Whereas, you know, if you have time to really connect with like a victim and their backstory and they're just the one that's being focused on, I find that I care a lot more about the mystery in that case, and I really want it to be solved and justice to be served and all of that. So I understand that more victims means more tragedy, but it also kind of dehumanizes the victims because of that. So I found that to be generally a negative. So with all that being said, what is my rating of this book? I think I'm gonna go with 3 stars, which is really a bummer. I am seeing such great reviews for this book, and it's not like a ton of reviews. I'm not seeing this book everywhere, but the reviews that I am seeing are all so good. So I wish I was on that side of it, but I'm loving that it is getting the love that it's getting, and I hope that it finds its target audience audience, because I don't think realistic thriller lovers like me are its intended audience. So I hope that it finds the more like fantasy, magical realism audience. So I guess that's what I'm gonna leave you with, is my recommendation. I would recommend this to people who like paranormal, unexplained, magical things in their books. You know, obviously the female women empowerment piece, if that calls to you, I think you will enjoy this, but you have to be okay with the magical stuff too. So I'm bummed I didn't love it, but I do love the cover of this book, so I'll be keeping it at least for a while to keep it on my bookshelves. And hopefully some people find this book who really enjoy it. But now I am moving on. The next book that I'm gonna pick up is Breathless. This one should be quick, unlike The Change, which was very long and felt very long. This one looks to be very short, less than 350 pages, and I'm hoping it's really fast-paced and thrilling. So I will be back with an update once I've started that book, once I have some initial thoughts, and I'll let you know how it's going. Okay, another day, another car clip, another hot Iowa day, so I don't look my best. It's the next day, and you remember how I said I was going to read last night? That didn't happen. I ended up hanging out with my friend Lisa instead, and we did like a puzzle and talked about books, which was super fun, but not productive when it comes to reading. So this morning I got to work a little bit early and I started Breathless. I've only made it to page 26 so far, so I'm at the very beginning, but I have a pretty good idea about what this is about now. So I figured I'd give a little synopsis. So we are following our main character named Cecily. She is an adventure travel journalist, and she is a mountain climber herself, but she's not super extreme. She just kind of covers adventurous stories for this like adventure magazine or something that she works for. And she is covering this guy named Charles, who is this amazing mountaineer, and he is attempting to, I guess, do something that no human has ever done before. He wants to summit all of these mountains that are above 8,000 feet in elevation, and I guess above 8,000 feet the air is so limited that like most humans can't survive up there, and so most climbers when they go up bring oxygen, but Charles does it without oxygen, and so he's attempting to summit all of these mountains within a year, which nobody has done before. And then he actually asked Cecily to be the one to cover his story after he summits the last mountain. But the catch is that he wants Cecily to come with her and summit the mountain herself. And then once they summit it, then he'll grant her the exclusive interview about his whole experience. So Cecily is very excited because this could like make her career to get this huge story, but she's nervous because she's never summited a mountain of that size. She's actually failed a couple of her most recent climbs, so she's very scared about being able to actually do it. So far I'm really liking that premise. I like our main character. We're kind of building the cast of characters because I think this is going to turn into a murder mystery, and murder mysteries almost always have a cast of characters with like stereotype kind of people. So the crew that's going on this final climb is obviously Cecily, who we're rooting for, and we want her to summit this because she kind of is down on her luck and whatever. And then we've got Charles, who so far seems super trustworthy, and like he's the protector of the group. He's the one who is like superhuman. So far we're made out to trust him. We'll see how that changes. And then other characters, we've got like a super chatty frat boy kind of guy. We've got an influencer girl who is a really good climber, but she always wears like flashy clothes and takes a bunch of like flashy pictures on the mountains. We've got like the guy who's taking this too seriously and always wants to be like super on time and make sure that everyone's got like the right gear and is all prepared. So he's not super likable off the bat. And then I might be missing some people, but then we've also got this other guy who basically on the morning they're leaving for the mission, he comes down super last minute, clearly super hungover, doesn't really say a lot. So he's the one that we know like nothing about so far. So he's the one who seems the most suspicious. So that's about where I am. They're about to start the big expedition, so I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm kind of expecting this to give me One by One vibes by Ruth Ware. I will let you know if those similarities continue, but obviously just being like on the mountain in a cold climate with a limited cast of characters that are all isolated together, it's definitely reminding me of that book, which I did enjoy, so I hope that I enjoy this one as well. Also, I wanted to mention that this author is a climber. This is her It says in 2019 she became the youngest Canadian woman to climb Manaslu in Nepal, which is the mountain that they are climbing in this book. I love when books are written by subject matter experts in the field. Clearly this woman knows what she's talking about when it comes to climbing and when it comes to climbing this specific mountain, so I'm very excited to see how that comes through in the writing and what different like situations our characters get into that this author probably went through herself. I just find that really, really interesting. So really liking it so far and excited to get back into it. I'm gonna go to work now and hopefully get some good reading time in tonight after work and get a big chunk of this book read. Okay, great news you guys. I just finished Breathless and I loved it. I cannot wait to talk to you about it. This was such a fun thriller. So like I think I told you, this is following our main girl named Cecily, who is kind of an amateur mountain climber, but she gets this opportunity to go on this massive expedition to summit one of the highest mountains in the world. It's over 8,000 meters tall. I think I said feet earlier, but it's meters. And when she's on this expedition, people start turning up dead under suspicious circumstances. I loved so much about this book. I thought it was the perfect mix of mystery and thriller because obviously we are trying to solve the mystery of who is killing people, if someone is killing people at all, or is it just like the dangers of the mountain actually getting them. And then it's also very thrilling because our main character truly is in survival mode because she is kind of an amateur mountaineer. She's not an expert, so she's getting herself into like sticky situations on the mountain, plus trying to avoid a possible killer. So there's a lot of like high action scenes as well. So I just loved that. It made this book so quick to read. It was compulsively readable. When I was reading it, I was flying through the pages. When I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about wanting to read it, which I think is always a great sign for a thriller that you're enjoying it, is if when you're not reading it, you're like itching to get back to it. Because there are many thrillers that I read where I'll set it down and be like, honestly, I could never pick it back up and I would be perfectly fine. This was not that. What I also loved about this book is just the amount of detail about climbing mountains that's in here. Something that I'm coming to realize that I love in books is when fictional characters have interests and hobbies that the author is actually an expert in. So like I think I mentioned earlier, our author is actually a mountain climber and she has set her own records when it comes to climbing. And throughout this whole entire book, it's just obvious that she knows what she's talking about. And it's like simultaneously explaining some concepts to me that I know are probably pretty basic to anyone who does know like this hobby, and then at other times, like because of the detail or because of the situation, I can tell it's like really advanced. And there were just so many things in this book that I learned about the hobby, like what different equipment is called and what it's used for, and like how easily things can go wrong if you're not super meticulous in checking your equipment, or like how something you would never even think about can become a problem when you're on a mountain because it might be something that we take for granted at sea level and in our normal lives, but isn't readily available up on a mountaintop. Things like that. I think it just made for a super unique setting and premise. And I think it was a great way to introduce like conflict that is different from every other mystery thriller, because most thrillers aren't set on a mountain. So you have a lot of factors here that can come into play that you wouldn't read in other books. So that's what I really appreciated about it. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. I just can't think of anything in this book that I didn't like or that I would have changed. I think it's pretty much perfect for what it is. That being said, is it my new all-time favorite thriller? No, but I don't think it has to be. I've really changed my mindset recently when it comes to reading thrillers, and for the most part, I'm just in them for the fun ride now. I'm not disappointed if I saw like the end reveal coming. I mean, if it's all super obvious, yes, I will be disappointed and I would knock that, but in a situation like this where it's a little bit isolated, it's not completely closed circle, but there's obviously a somewhat limited cast of characters, like it has to be one of them, and I understand that, but I liked how we got there, and there were multiple twists to get us there. But I also liked that it wasn't, again, it wasn't completely isolated, and it was a larger cast of characters than I was originally thinking it might be, because like I mentioned, this does follow this one like expedition group that has like 7 or 8 members in it, but as they're climbing the mountain, they're interacting with different groups of travelers. They're interacting with the Sherpas who like live on the mountain and make it habitable for them and climbable for them. So there's a much bigger cast than it originally seems, and I liked that because it was able to add in different victims and different suspects than just that core group of 7 or 8 people. So you guys, I loved it. My only critique or recommendation would be to save this book for winter. It was a little weird reading about snowy conditions when it's finally hot where I live. That being said, this is set in September, so it's not like in the dead of winter, but it is on a mountaintop, so it's snowy, it's icy. So if you want the full experience, I would wait for a snowy day or a snowy vacation or whatever it is that will make you feel like you're really immersed in the story because of how cold it is around you. But I obviously still enjoyed it even in the hot summer weather, so if you want to pick it up right now, go for it. I won't stop you. But definitely a fun winter read. So huge success. I'm so glad to have a 5-star book there. And then I'm hoping the next one I pick up is also gonna be 5 stars. I'm about to start The Four Winds. I can get this on audio via Hoopla, so that's what I'm gonna do because it is quite a chunky book. I'm going into this expecting to love it, and I will be back when I have more of an update about what it's about and some concrete thoughts and if I am enjoying it. All right, you guys, I am back with the real star of the show, Carissa. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi. It's a Saturday today. I have been reading. I wanted to update because I'm about halfway through The Four Winds, and like I have thoughts, but also not really. It's interesting because I really didn't know much about the plot of this book going in. Like, I knew it was historical fiction. I think I knew it had something to do with like the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, but as far as the actual plot and what the characters were going through, I didn't know what to expect. So the first 100 pages didn't really hook me because I was just confused. Like, I didn't know where it was gonna go. I didn't know how I was supposed to feel about the characters. So it took me a while to get into it. I will say that now halfway, I'm much more invested in it and the characters. It is about this family, primarily this mom, who has grown up in Texas her whole life, and then she was treated really badly by her parents and her family, and kind of accidentally fell pregnant and fell into marriage with this guy, who turns out to be a pretty crappy guy, but has really awesome parents. So she forms this really great family bond with her parents-in-law, and then she has 2 children. Hey, be careful, please. They fall on hard times during the Great Depression because they live in Texas and they are in the middle of the Dust Bowl, which I don't know a ton about. I didn't know a ton about going into this, but what this book has been talking about is really, really terrible dust storms. Hi.
Hi.
Where like you have to take shelter as much as you can, breathe through wet cloths, and she had 2 young children, and her youngest child is a son, and he got super sick as a result of these storms, and that was really heartbreaking to read about. Definitely enlightening about this period of time and how many people probably went through similar experiences, but it was because of these dust storms that she decides to take her 2 children and move west. So they are headed to California, mainly to escape the dust storms, but hopefully in hopes of a better life. That's kind of what's been advertised to them, is that California is like this magical land. And so she's hoping that it will be a better life for her and her children. But then of course, because it is the Great Depression, they get there and it's definitely not what she was hoping it was. And they just end up in this really difficult situation of poverty, of trying to find work where they can, but not being able to negotiate wages that are fair. So they're living on absolutely nothing. Really sad and heartbreaking to read about. And that's kind of where we're at now, is they're in the thick of that struggle. And I can't say enjoying it because it's tough to read about, especially as a mom with actually 2 young kids. My heart just goes out for our main character and her struggles and just trying to feed her children and keep them healthy. And I'm interested to see where it goes from here because there's not a lot of plot. So we will see how the rest of it goes. I'm definitely planning on reading more tonight as soon as I can, as soon as these little ones let me. No, I don't want to hum. I'm talking, babe. And I will be back with my overall thoughts. That's all I got. Can you say bye?
Bye.
So, funny story. I actually finished this video over a month ago, and I've just been sitting on the footage, waiting to edit it and upload it until I had some time. Now I had time, I got to editing, and I know I filmed the last clip for this video, but I can't find it anywhere. It either got deleted or got put into a wrong folder somewhere on my computer, and I can't find it. So I'm here to wrap up this video over a month after I read these books. I think the only one I had left to talk about is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, which I can pretty easily sum up by saying I loved it. I love Kristen Hanna. I love her ability to take a seemingly boring or unknown or like uncomfortable historical situation and make it interesting and approachable and emotional, even for someone reading about it in 2022. I especially loved the mother children relationships in here. I loved the daughter. She is very spunky, and I loved her personality and kind of the juxtaposition between her spunky, outspoken personality and the mother's more timid, conservative, kind of just trying to make it through for her children type personality. It was fun seeing them kind of oppose each other but ultimately work together for their greater goal, and I just thought this was super well done. It's definitely straight up historical fiction, so I'm not going to recommend this to anyone who doesn't think that they love historical fiction as a genre. But if you do like historical fiction, if you like character-driven emotional type stories, if you want to learn a little something new about the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, I think this is pretty cool. I also really liked at the end, I was listening to the audiobook and there was a conversation between Chris and Hannah and Julia Whelan, who narrated this audiobook. And Julia Whelan is a pretty famous, well-known audiobook narrator at this point. I think a lot of people know her for narrating Chris and Hannah and Taylor Jenkins Reid and Emily Henry books. So like pretty distinguished. They had a conversation about what it was like for Julia to get into the characters' minds and prepare herself to narrate this audiobook. And I thought that was a really cool conversation. So overall, I don't think this book needs me to say it's a good book, because obviously it's super hyped and beloved in the historical fiction community, but I do need to confirm I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it, and I'm really excited to continue exploring Chris and Hannah's backlist. And with that, I would say this video was definitely a success. Some surprises here. The change, not my thing, but interesting nonetheless. Breathless, an absolute surprise of a thriller, and one I'm excited for more people to read, and I hope more people love it, especially as we get into the winter months. And then The Four Winds, another 5-star. So thank you for bearing with me with my video uploading struggles. I'm a little behind schedule right now, but things are about to really free up in my life, and hopefully that means my content is gonna get even more consistent, which is very exciting. So get ready for that. But otherwise, I don't have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.